Hello YouTube. This afternoon I'm going to show you how to set up the Mark 10 to do film on water. So the Mark 10 is typically in this vertical position, but what we need to do is we need to lay it down on its side. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this piece of foam to essentially hold up the Mark 10 when it's on its side. We're just going to grab this and lay it down onto the foam very carefully.
Go.
And now that the Mark 10 is on its side, we're going to level it off, or make sure it doesn't bounce around by using this piece of cork, and also a piece of paper towel on this side. And to make sure that it's actually level, we're going to get this circular level from this box with the 0.5 Newton force gauge inside. So we use this little circular level. I'm going to put that right there. And we're going to make sure that this little bubble inside is as close to the center as possible. And we're going to do that by just kind of shifting it around a little bit. Now that the Mark 10 is level, we can go ahead and put this force gauge on. And again, we're using the 0.5 Newton force gauge, which is by far the most sensitive one. And what it does is it's going to sit right here, and we're going to secure it with 4 different bolts. So bolts that look like this are going to go back here. We're just going to gently screw them in. They only have to be finger tight, so it's not a super big deal. Just one underneath here. Then I'm just going to go back through all of them one more time, make sure that they're all finger tight. And there, now the force gauge is secured, and we're going to attach this connection. And quickly turn off the force gauge once it reads 00, since this end here is very sensitive and we don't want to damage the load cell in any way.
Hold it.
Okay. And I'm just going to screw this tight as well. And now the force gauge is completely attached. Okay. All right. For this next step, we're going to need 2 lab jacks, this black 3D printed boat, and 2 3D printed grippers. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this first lab jack, and we're going to set it under here and raise it to a point where it holds this this piece of metal. There we go. So now that's secure. Next step is to attach these grippers, and now to attach the gripper to this end, we're going to use this extension. Now we're going to screw this extension piece into here. I'm going to attach the 3D printed gripper to it, like so. I want this gripper facing down. So I'm going to use the nut to secure it in this position. There we go. And then we have to do that to the other side as well. So we're going to screw this in. And use this nut to tighten it a little bit. And there, now that the grippers are in the correct position, we can go ahead and make sure that they are level. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to adjust the height of this parallel plate by using this specific Allen wrench to undo these 4 bolts here. Now that it's loose, we can kind of shift this up a little bit. Get them to be a little bit more flush. And the way that we're going to push these together is we're going to use this control panel here, and we're going to have it go to the max. Move them a little bit closer together so we can get a good gauge on whether or not they're level. And now that seems level. I'll tighten these bolts. Now we can go ahead, fill this boat up with some DI water.
Fill up the boat until 75 to 80% full.
And the last thing to do is to attach 2 pieces of double-sided tape, one to each one of these grippers, and you can kind of see it on there a little bit. And now we add one little square of 1 to 20 PDMS onto double-sided tape very gently. The PDMS is actually the material that's going to stick to the films, to the dog bones. Now that's secure. And tighten these bolts again. There we go. And now the last step is to make sure that these 2 grippers are 1.5 centimeters apart. So I'm just going to use this control panel up here. So it's set to max, which means it's going to move at the maximum speed that it can, which is 330 millimeters per minute. I'm going to use this arrow, just kind of do that, space out a little bit. So I kind of overshot it a little bit. So I'm going to use the minimum setting. So it's going to move at about 5 millimeters per minute. I'm just going to get it back to the 1.5 centimeters. The last thing that we need to do, now that everything is set up, is to float the dog bones onto the water. And we don't have any samples right now, so we're just going to pretend that there's a dog bone floating in there. And the way that we're going to attach it to the grippers is we're going to center this boat and raise the lab jack like so until the dog bone is in contact with the PDMS on the grippers. And now you're ready to run the test.
Yay! This is the digital control panel on the Mark 10. One thing you need to check is the speed. So you always have to make sure the speed is 0.4 millimeters a minute. And that's it.
This is the software that we use to collect data with the Mark 10. It's called Measure Gauge Plus. And there's nothing going on right now since it's not connected to the force gauge, but what you do is everything was set up. You would press connect, 0 travel, clear gauge, 0 gauge, and then click startup. And you'll acquire your data, and then once that's done, you would click export to Excel and save that to your personal folder, and then you can save that data here and also send it to yourself via email and analyze the data with your software of choice. Now, after your tests are all done, we're going to have to reset up the Mark 10 in the vertical position for the next person. So we're going to do that by first removing this keyboard here, this mouse, removing this jack along with the boat. And this is just DI water, so you can dump this down the sink. Removing this jack as well. Removing these grippers. Removing this extension piece here. Make sure that the force gauge is off anytime you mess with this bottom piece, because again, we don't want the load cell inside to be damaged. We want to remove the force gauge, and we're going to do that just by doing everything in reverse. So we're going to unscrew this connection, this connector. Then we're going to unscrew these 4 bolts. Now I'm going to return this force gauge to the appropriate container along with the boat. These 4 bolts, the level, the grippers, which may be just a little wet because of the water, and also this extension. And I think that's about it. Now we can close this, and we can return this box to where it needs to be, which is up here, away from everyone else. And now the last thing that I'm going to do is raise this one more time. And we're going to do that by first removing this paper towel, this piece of cork, and grabbing the Mark 10 and carefully raising it. All right. Now we're all done.